We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. I am in Georgia. It is, what is it, Wednesday? And we have a guest today, our friend Eric, who is from Iowa. So we're not both in the Midwest now. I'm on the East Coast. You're in the Midwest. And there's a lot of shit going on this past week, Eric. So thanks for joining me today.
Well, thanks for having me. I love being on the podcast, and nothing better to do on a nice rainy night.
That's the funny thing about it is when I do the pod, uh, I could be a cordial guy, and I'm guessing you could be a cordial guy. But I think it's rather foreign to see how popular we might be when we're on the podcast. You throw something on the internet, you talk, you engage about politics, and all of a sudden people think you're a fucking genius. And
Yeah,
I'll
it's
acknowledge I'm
weird.
not a genius.
Oh, it's weird, especially when, like the other night, I had one of my TikToks. Went to bed like 3 in the morning after watching your podcast. It was like at 1,200 views. Woke up the next day to go to work, and I was at 14,000.
Wow. Yeah, that'll surprise you when that kind of shit happens. And for those of you that haven't already checked out Eric's TikTok page and his YouTube page, it's Analytical Iowan. I think if you would have had a PR team, they would have said, "That's nice, Eric, but maybe go with something simpler." But
Somebody else smarter than me probably would have come up with something
yeah,
easier, but
but it is who you are. I mean, who the fuck ever thought about rational boomer? So, but Analytical Iowan is ANALYTICALIOWAN. I've been practicing that. By all
yes,
means,
it's a mouthful.
it's a mouthful. By all means, check out Eric on TikTok and YouTube. He's got a lot of interesting stuff that he talks about. We're of a like mind, so you won't be surprised by anything. Eric, we were talking about this before we went on the show, and I think it's important to bring up. I did a TikTok. There were a number of TikToks done about these fences that were being put up around the Supreme Court, and we were presuming it was because of some decisions coming out, specifically the immunity decision from the Supreme Court, which we are kind of expecting this week. But you have another take on this. You've got some deeper insights, and I feel a little ashamed because if what you're going to say is true, I got caught, and I try to pride myself in not getting caught.
Well, I did the same thing. I did a TikTok first thing this morning. I had an early meeting at work, had all day, a full day of meetings actually. So I wanted to have one ready to go right off the bat. I said they're putting up the barricades. And by the time I went and had lunch, Hawk had come out and said that wasn't a thing, that he found on Yahoo News that that was an old video that had been recirculating again. I think he said it was by people on the right, that they were trying to start something.
Oh,
Um, that they were saying that the Supreme Court was going to grant Donald Trump full immunity, and they were preparing for the backlash coming from the left.
it's for me, that's rather embarrassing because I keep telling people that a lot of the stuff they hear, like the polls, well, I want to talk about this too. This talk about, oh, the Democrats are working to replace Joe Biden. All of this stuff pretty much comes from Republicans. And I'm saying, don't believe the bullshit you hear. And then I hear something like this coming from legitimate uh, creators that I'm familiar with. And it turns out it too is a bunch of bullshit. And it too comes from Republicans. It's
Yeah,
embarrassing, but I own it. I was wrong, and we're
yeah.
correcting it now.
I had to do another TikTok later in the day. Multiple comments on mine saying there are no barricades. They never put them up. And I saw the thing from Hawk, and I looked into it a little bit. Sounds like there's no barricades. So I did another one. Said, hey, I guess they're not up, but my point from the TikTok still stands. They're not giving him immunity.
No,
They can't.
no, they can't. And some people, this is something else I heard. This makes sense. That likely decisions from the Supreme Court will come out on Thursday or Friday. So that's conceivable that that immunity case decision could come out about that. It's got to come out at some point between now and the 1st of July because the term is over. Um, and a lot of people speculating about what's going to happen. Oh, they're going to find him not having immunity or he is going to be immune. There was actually as much as we get fooled, I heard a story that there was some like back channel reports about Donald Trump getting immunity, that is projected that they heard from the inside people that he is getting immunity from the Supreme Court. And a bunch of the Republicans were crowing about that shit. They were talking about that shit. So they're susceptible to being fooled too.
Well, yeah, and a lot of people, you hear what you want to hear. And when I heard they were putting up barricades around the Supreme Court from creators I trusted, I went, oh yeah, well that makes sense because they're not going to give him immunity, and they're worried about the rabid Trumplefucks doing something because they didn't give him immunity. Well, now these people you're talking about heard, or they claim to have heard from somebody who maybe knows that he's going to get immunity, and they're running with it. We both sides of the aisle do fall victim to it.
Yeah. But we should take a note as Democrats, we should take note of this, that they are susceptible and they're dumb enough to believe anything. So instead of waiting for them to gaslight us, maybe we should gaslight those motherfuckers. I've often said when this all started with Donald Trump and all these ridiculous conspiracy theories, I felt compelled to come up with just some fucking outrageous conspiracy theory just to see if I could sell it with the Republicans. And I'm got a feeling that I could come up with some crazy shit.
Oh, without a doubt, just with stuff we've heard since he's been president, but even since he came down the golden escalator, I mean, they will believe some of the dumbest shit for this man. Good Lord.
I think we should start a rumor, kind of tie into one of their bullshit rumors and say, listen, you keep telling us JFK Jr. is coming back. What you don't know is that RFK Jr. actually died in that plane. This is JFK Jr. He's about the same age as what JFK Jr. would be. Clearly, he's a Kennedy. So, this is how JFK Jr. is coming back. He's going to team up with Donald Trump and win the election in November. Now, that's a sellable idea to dumb people, not to you and me, but that's
Oh,
sellable.
it's sellable. And there are some people who are very gullible who would buy into it. Of course, why they would believe that it took this long that JFK Jr. decided to be his cousin, but people believe it. But just after some of the things I've seen today on TikTok, I think they'll believe anything.
Yeah. No, they will believe anything as long as it supports their agenda. And, you know, to be honest with you, the Republicans have kind of put us all in this position where politics has always been kind of adversarial, but now it's life or death. It's one way or the other. You can't compromise, you can't negotiate, so you will take any advantage, either side you're on, to push down the other side. And they've really put us in a bad situation, a situation that doesn't afford us the possibility of getting anything done. It's all about the fight. It's all about the war against the bad guys, whoever they may be. And that's something we have to get out from under, because as long as we're doing that, we're never going to accomplish anything. If we're constantly fighting the Republicans and they're constantly fighting the Democrats, nothing gets done in this country. And that defeats the whole purpose of Congress.
Yeah, and I think after the blue wave, in November, when the new Congress gets seated on January 3rd, you're going to see a lot of stuff get done, and the more that gets done, the farther down Republicans are going to get beat. They're going to be licking their wounds for several election cycles, and when they come back around, they are going to have to, whether they come back as the Republican Party, whether they merge with the Libertarians and come back as the Libertarian Party in 10 years, who knows? But whatever they come back as, they're going to have to go back to old school politics where you horse trade, you give a little, like I remember one story from 20, 25 years ago because it involved Chuck Grassley. They worked out some deal on some budget bill, and Chuck Grassley got hundreds of thousands of dollars to determine why hog lots smell. But he got that worked in, and that bought his vote on whatever the bill was. And that's how it used to be. And I'm not saying the pork is good in bills, but you used to be able to get both sides to work together to get stuff accomplished.
Yeah, you did a little horse trading. Everybody got something they like and they agreed and they negotiated it out and they got it done. Right now, we get very little done because there is no horse trading. There is um, no negotiation. One thing I want to warn people about, um, I think a lot of people believe that once the Republicans are eradicated, the Democrats are in full power, it's going to be smooth sailing. But some things to be aware of, and I don't want to be a Debbie Downer here because I think it will be the most positive thing. Uh, but when you're in a different situation, people react differently. Now, as much as the Democratic Party is relatively unified compared to the Republicans, once the Democrats get the full power that I believe they're going to get, I think you can expect the far left progressives to start flexing their muscle a little bit. Okay, here we are. Now we want the Democrat centrist or the moderates to behave like us. So there's going to be some kind of internal negotiations, hopefully, as opposed to standoffs like we get now.
I think it's going to be more negotiations. The far left is going to have to give, you know, where I'm gonna throw something out there. Maybe they want to raise the food stamp minimum wage threshold or whatever, the minimum income threshold by 200%, and the moderates are only willing to double it. They might have to accept that, hey, we're doing something. You gotta work with us a little bit. We'll get this passed. If this works, we can increase it. We can look at it down the road. The far left, they cannot be in an all or nothing mindset because
Right,
then nothing's going to get accomplished.
right. Well, I don't consider myself far left progressive, but hear me out on this and see what you think about this. I think that when it comes to trying to rectify what damage has been done, um, we almost need to go way left to bring it back to normal. We can't go from far right to center because it's going to stay there on the right side. I always liken it to, well, you would know about this, and I know about this, is like you're in a car in a snowstorm on a slippery road, and you start sliding to the right, and you crank the wheel all the way to the left, and it goes to the left, and then you crank it to the right, so you can ultimately get to even or in the middle. And I'm not
Yeah,
opposed
but
to going radical left for a little while just to bring things back to center.
yeah, I mean, we might have to go and drastically raise some things, but we can't keep, you know, we can't go too far left for too long. Somebody I talked to around the time that uh let's see, it was toward the Barack Obama's second term. It
Mhm.
was in the beginning of that. And he didn't predict him by name, but he predicted a Donald Trump like president. He said, we had a black man as president. You're gonna get an old white man, very conservative, that we're gonna swing back to the right. We swung left to get Barack Obama. We're not gonna swing farther left in the same swing. It's gotta go backward. And I think that's what's gonna happen with like this stuff. We'll swing to the left. We gotta go quite a ways, and then there'll be some pushback. We'll go back right a little bit, then we'll go left again.
Well, they've opened Pandora's box, kind of. I always heard the Republicans say this, and I've even heard some Democratic people say this because they believe it because they've heard it over and over for decades. When it comes to Social Security, Medicare, welfare, whatever, the common comment by conservatives is, we just can't afford that. we'll put our kids into debt forever. Well, I think we found out that that's bullshit. We somehow can afford almost $1 trillion in a defense fund when we don't need to go that far. We somehow found a way to um, give a tax cut of $2 trillion to wealthy people. We also found out through Joe Biden that when you do give some help to the middle class, it's good for the country, it's good for the people, and it's good for the economy. So now that we know all that, that bullshit, well, we would love to do it, but I'm conservative and we can't afford it. Bullshit. We can afford to help the people in this country, and it will be good for our government.
Oh yeah. I mean, and the biggest thing, what gets me is the people who say we can't afford it, they're all against taxing the richest people
Mhm.
who wouldn't even notice, the difference by having them pay their fair share. Instead, they want to come up with and cheer things like what Donald Trump said of, I'm going to get rid of the income tax and go to 100% tariff on everything.
Yeah.
Good Lord. I told you I had that video that I woke up to with 14K views. That was the one. I was
Right.
talking about this tariff idea. I said you have 100% tariff on an item. Okay, if it costs them $2 to bring it in now it's going to cost $4. If they were selling it for $3, now they're going to sell it for $5 or $6 to make the same dollars. Well, eventually, somebody in the US is going to make it for cheaper. So now you're not bringing that item in. And now the next item on the list that, is now going to have to go up in tariff. And it's a never ending cycle. You can't make up that money.
No. And the only
You can't
people
fund the government on it.
the only people who pay for tariffs are us. If there
Yeah.
if there's something coming from China that we need and we can't get it elsewhere and there's a tariff, then the price goes up and then of course the money comes out of us. That's where Donald Trump is just flailing here. I mean, you can see he's in a panic talking about tariffs as opposed to um, federal tax. Then he goes into Nevada and tells people, "Oh, we're not going to charge taxes on tips." But he can't say that. He can't make that directive himself. That's something Congress has to do. And even if he did become president, it's not likely he would have full control of the House and the Senate. So it's just him saying shit in hopes that people will believe it and say, he's my guy. He wants to save me. And I just don't see it working. It's too needy. It's too pathetic. It's absolute panic on his part.
Well, a couple of comments from my comment sections on TikTok about stuff like that. They both kind of said the same thing. Two different commenters likened it to he's in high school running for student class president,
Right.
and one said that he's making promises and no homework, and somebody else said he's promising vending machines and candy bars in the hallways.
Right.
You know, just writing checks he can't cash, grasping onto anything.
Right. I mean, he's got a lot of issues. That's what I keep telling people. I mean, he's a 78-year-old man. He's not in the best health, and he's got a lot of problems. 34 felony charges, this immunity case hanging over his head, which he's going to lose. His money is being taken away from him. And then we talk about the one thing that the Republicans always crowed about, as if it was going to save Donald Trump, was his True Social going public, the IP for or the IPO for True Social, and now we're finding out that that is going horribly wrong.
Yeah, just earlier tonight I was looking at it. It's down to $31 and some change per share. I think it started at like 65. It's still up from its lowest. Its lowest point was like 22.
Right.
But it hasn't made a dime. It hasn't really bounced back since he has been convicted. And you remember they had that accounting firm that they had to let go of because the SEC said you don't qualify. Well, they had a new audit come out, and the reporting I saw tonight said they've lost in the first quarter of 2024 like $330 million.
How did
That's in
how
3 months.
in 3 months. And how does a company continue to run in that condition? I mean, at some point, and some point, the FEC is going to come back and say, you got to shut this fucker down. This just isn't viable. And then what happens when he doesn't have that fail safe of the billions of dollars that he's allegedly going to get, that he will never get for this because it's horrible. It's not a great concern for business. He's failing miserably like he does with everything else. And that money pressure has got to play a serious role. I mean, he's really having a difficult time. When we were talking about Joe Biden doing rallies and spending $50 million in advertising. Funny, you don't see any advertising from Donald Trump. If he was actually raising the money he claims to, he would be spending money on commercials, but he's not. And that's one of the big issues. Joe Biden's going to cover every swing state with all kinds of commercials, and Donald Trump isn't doing jack shit. He thinks he can play off his reputation.
Well, yeah, because his ego doesn't let him accept the fact that his reputation's in the shitter.
Yeah.
He still thinks he's Donald Trump of the 1990s, where, you mentioned his name and people cheered. They thought he was a genius and a business mogul. Most people with common sense back then knew he was full of shit, but he still seemed to, even when his companies failed, he seemed to bounce back and make money out of it. So some people bought into it, but now so much is out about him. It's ridiculous. His name isn't worth anything. The Trump brand actually hurts him.
Yeah. Yeah. And people are bailing from the Trump brand. I just want to tell folks, people have had opinions of Donald Trump since like the 80s, 90s, and forward. And people say, well, he's a billionaire. He's successful at this. He's successful at that. And I always ask people, I go, where did you hear that? I mean, where did you get that information from? And it all goes back to one source, to Donald Trump. Donald
Yeah.
Trump says I'm a billionaire over and over again, and people believe he's a billionaire. But we know he's a pathological liar too. I don't understand how people keep getting sucked in to what he says when he continually lies.
Well, because for years, part of it was he never had to release his taxes till he
Right.
ran for office.
Right.
And then when he did, he fought like hell to not release them. So because you never saw the actual accounting, you didn't know people had their assumptions, but no one knew for sure how bad and how shady his finances really were.
Right. Right. And now he's painted himself in a corner. Coming up late next week is this proposed debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Donald Trump was screaming for the fucking debate. He needed the attention. He needed something to fundraise off, and I don't think he thought Joe Biden would actually commit to it this early in the race, because this is quite early for debates in the race. But then Joe Biden comes out, says, I'll take on two debates, gives him a little shit, and Donald Trump jumps the gun and says, yeah, I'll accept. And now you can kind of tell that the media, and the rest of the Trump-fucks are having some second thoughts about this.
Oh yeah, Donald Trump backed himself into a major corner. Nothing about the debate works in Donald Trump's favor at all. But like I said at the time it came out, he jumped at the opportunity because he's not really fundraising. He doesn't have the money for rallies. He can't buy TV time. Even Fox News isn't putting him on nearly as much.
Yeah.
They're limiting his exposure. And he thought a debate would be something that would get him out on all major networks. Everybody'd cover it. He'd get hold this big event and it'd be free for him, which is what he loves. He loves free. And then with that, like you said, Joe Biden gave him some shit, called his bluff a little bit, called him a chicken or whatever he called, whatever he said, got him really in his feelings.
Right.
And he agreed to everything that works against Donald Trump.
And that's what Donald Trump does. He fails. He acts out of emotions and he fucking fails every time. Um, Now, I was watching on the media, and some of the people in the media, this was left side media, They said all the same things that you said, which are all true. And this person that was on there, he says, well, you still got to be careful. Just because they turn the mic off doesn't mean he's not going to be yelling, that he's not going to be screaming and trying to overtalk Joe Biden even after the mic is off. And that is probably true. And they were trying to say that, oh, Donald Trump will still try the same tactics. I hope Joe Biden's ready for this. I hope he doesn't get shook. Let's remember in 2020, Joe Biden didn't get shook. He won both those debates. And secondly, if Donald Trump is screaming and ranting and raving off mic in the background, he's going to look fucking pathetic, is what he's going to look absolutely pathetic doing this. But still, like we've talked about, the left side media wants to leave some hope there because it's going to be a battle, and we want you to watch CNN for this battle of the Titans. It's not going to be anything like that. They forgot about the fact that Donald Trump is really having some problems with staying on track and not going off on ridiculous tangents. He can scream all he wants, but if he's talking about his mommy or whales or whatever the fuck he's talking about, people are going to be exposed to the shit show, the confusion that Donald Trump is.
Oh yeah. And on top of it, I want to say I read somewhere that if he finds a way to overtalk Joe Biden, even when his mic is off, that they will restart Joe Biden's time once he shuts up.
Right.
Like they'll let him his piece, and once he's done, okay, Joe Biden, now it's your turn. Here's your minute and a half or whatever time it is. I heard that, and I'd also heard that they have their two separate podiums. I've heard they're going to be seated. I've heard they're going to be standing. I don't know which way it's going to be. But if they leave their lectern, if they leave their podium, basically they're done from the debate and they're just disqualified. They would just not get back in to answer any more questions. So it's not like Donald Trump could run over to Joe Biden's podium and steal his mic and start ranting.
Well, that's interesting. You should mention that because they're talking about. Um, I've often likened the Republicans or the Trumplefucks specifically as WWE wrestling. Okay, because it's always a fucking put up show. But Donald Trump has talked about the fact that, if he does show up, he may just lose. So I don't weaken Joe Biden so I can carry him and still beat him in the general election. That is the ravings of somebody who knows they're going to get their ass kicked.
Oh yeah, I think if he doesn't know he's gonna get beat, I think he's worried that he's gonna get beat, and he's setting up a defense already for when it happens. Just like he's already screaming and hollering about, well, I'm only gonna accept the results if if there's no fraud, but if I lose, there was fraud.
Right.
He's
Well,
basically saying the same thing he said about everything. He said it about what was it? Whichever award show it would have been that he would have got for The Apprentice that he didn't win. He said it about the Iowa caucuses that he didn't win. He said they were rigged against him. He said 2016 election was rigged against him when he did win, but he said it was rigged because he didn't win the popular vote. He said 2020 was rigged. He started saying the primaries this year were going to be rigged. Now this every time he has a chance to lose something, he says it's rigged.
right. Well, along the lines of pro wrestling, that statement you made, I hadn't heard that. And that got me thinking in some different angles. You said that if he walks out from behind his lectern or his podium, that he would immediately be disqualified. Right.
I heard that from somewhere.
I did not know that for sure, and I'll check into it. But if that is the case, that may actually work for Donald Trump. Now, you said, well, of course, you can't get from out behind the podium if that's the rule, because then he'd be just disqualified. Now, you're suggesting that Donald Trump follows rules, and he does not. But if Donald Trump gets in a bad spot and is getting embarrassed, he walks out from behind the lectern over to Joe Biden. It's over. It's done. It's not unlike the champions in the WWE getting their ass kicked and they're going to lose their title, but instead they get disqualified so they get to hold on to the title. I could see Donald Trump using that to his advantage. Not that it would be an advantage, but in order to save face.
Oh, he'd use it to save face, and then he turn around. You know, if they've even got the inkling that that's going to happen, minutes after he would do that, there'd be a fundraising email go out. Look at what CNN did to me. They disqualified me at the debate. You better donate more money to my
Right.
campaign.
Right. Exactly. It sounds very cynical to say that kind of stuff, but we've seen crazier shit out of Donald Trump. He's going to try to game this situation best he can if he even shows up. I mean, I think the best case for him is to not show up, be exposed for being a pussy ass bitch as opposed to a mentally deficient idiot. It's going to be easier for him to recover from being a pussy. But because he's a narcissist, he can't allow himself to do that. So we need to continue to taunt this guy so he gets up in his feelings and just does something that's ill advised because he can't help but not be embarrassed.
Right. Well, and I think if he goes out and he gets embarrassed at the debate, you're not going to change the minds of a lot of the Trump supporters. You might get some. There's going to be a few if he really embarrasses himself who might go, "Oh God, this is worse than we thought." And I don't know why it would take that much, but you never know. Some of them might finally see the light.
Well, you know,
But if he doesn't show, those Trump supporters, they're going to come out. He'll be able to sell whatever he wants to them, and they'll still sing his praises.
right. Well, you know, I always get that comment, well, you'll never be able to change the minds of the Trump-a-fucks. You'll never get them to switch over to Joe Biden. And I always say, I know that. We don't need to change the base because we're talking about 25 to 30% of the Republicans or the country or whatever it is. It's not enough to win an election. These kinds of situations are for those people who may be sitting on the fence. I'm Republican, but I don't know if I can stomach Donald Trump. It's those independents, those moderates uh, that might even consider Donald Trump. This will be the point where they won't be able to stomach it. And Donald Trump will lose them. And we are finding out that Donald Trump is losing an immense amount of independence, which is absolutely necessary for him to win this election.
Oh yeah, and if he goes and he just completely embarrasses himself, that number's only going to increase because the people that were on the fence, especially if Joe Biden puts in a good showing, if Donald Trump looks half as um what's the word I want to say, like he's suffering the effects of dementia, like what we've seen in some of his videos. Somebody said in one of my comments that there was some moment when he froze or he said something like repadur or something
Yeah.
in a video clip. He said that looked to them like a mini stroke, and that all of his comments and his weird ramblings, like the shark and the battery thing from Vegas, it seems like the effects of somebody who has suffered strokes, and they think the big one's coming.
Well, yeah, the big one probably is coming. And I think that'll be the one thing that takes him out of the running for being the nominee. But you can see how the mind works with Republicans and Donald Trump. They know he's continues to get exposed for having a diminished cognitive ability. So what do? They take videos of Joe Biden and they doctor the videos, they edit the videos, or they limit what you see of the videos, trying to make Joe Biden look like he's losing it. That's what they do. They try to equivocate. Well, yeah, Donald Trump's got some problems, but Joe Biden's worse. That's what they try to do. And then you find out that these were done so badly that they were clearly edited, and it's an embarrassment for the Republican Party.
Oh yeah. And like there was one where they cropped the frame in and they cut out, once you show the full frame, well, Joe Biden's talking to somebody. Like you can see he's not just wandering off talking to nobody, like like he's suffering from dementia or something. No, he's talking to somebody. He walked over to talk to somebody. It makes sense. Just like the clip where they freeze it or whatever, where he kind of paused as he's sitting in his chair. Well, if you watch the whole clip, the speaker was still speaking, and he was trying to decide if everyone was going to sit down or if he was supposed to stay standing, which is why he paused. And then everybody sits down and he sits down. But they freeze it just right to make him look bad.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, the thing about it is that should be a positive for Democrats. What they're doing is absolute desperation. They're trying to create something out of nothing, something from something that doesn't exist. That's how desperate they are. And if they are that desperate, maybe what I'm saying and you're saying is true. There is no chance for Donald Trump in the debate. There is no chance for Donald Trump in November, and there's now starting to feel the pressure. So they're pulling the stops out. Let's make Joe Biden look bad. I mean, this is what they've been trying to do for 4 years anyway, and they've failed miserably. But now we're getting down to nut cutting time, and they really got to ramp it up. And I have a feeling that between now and November, we're going to see a lot of crazy shit.
Oh yeah, but one of the things with them editing the videos, they're editing those videos in the way they accuse us of editing the videos.
Right, right,
You know, there was the clip where he says, "Well, don't anything happen to you. I want your vote. I don't care about you. I just want your vote."
right.
And he says that in Vegas. Then he pauses, he thinks about it for a second, and it finally clicks, and he said the quiet part out loud. And he goes, "Well, the media is going to say I said something bad about it." But we take the clip exactly as he said it, and they go, "Well, you took it out of context. You clipped out all the context." No, there was no context before and after. It's clear that he realized he fucked up in what he said. We didn't take the context, but they say it because that's what they would do.
You know, in this upcoming debate, I don't know what kind of strategy Joe Biden's going to take. You know, he's more low key, more easygoing, steady as she goes. That's who he is. But if I'm in this debate with Donald Trump and I know his personality and I know how he behaves, I think the best strategy for Joe Biden is from the get go, go after that motherfucker hard because he is a bully. He is a coward. And once you slap the taste out of his mouth, he's going to be backing up the whole time. He's going to be confused. He's going to be upset and he's going to say some stupid shit. So I hope the strategists and the administration or the staff that he has for this upcoming debate, they cause him to get real aggressive right off the bat. Shut that fucker down quick before he can pull any of his bullshit.
Probably the best way to get to him would be to refer to um, probably his 34 felonies.
Right. Right.
You know,
Exactly.
call him a felon to his face, something like that. Maybe walk out and make a joke as he's walking by. Maybe pull his pant leg up, showing no ankle monitor. You know, something
Yeah.
like that. You know, something to point out that he's a convicted felon that would hit at his ego so hard, and it would all be true.
You know, and and also throw in the fact that he was found liable for rape. That's a little embarrassing. But you know what he'll probably find the most embarrassing? And I have a personal experience with this. As I've told people before, my father was a narcissistic, pathological liar, sociopath. And toward the last time I saw him, we were, he was taking my uncle to court. I was helping my uncle with small claims court. It was nothing big deal. But the funny thing is he was probably getting some of the dementia coming in too, because I walked up and talked to my uncle and my father's sitting there. My father looks at my uncle and goes, "Who the fuck is this?" My uncle goes, "That's your son." And he pulls down his glasses. He goes, "Oh, so it is. What the fuck do you want?" And so I start taking this on for my uncle, and he's trying to intimidate and trying to talk me down and stuff like that. I looked at him. I said, "Look, you're an old, a sickly old man, and you're broke. And when he came back, the only thing he questioned me on is that what makes you so sure I'm broke? Because that's all that mattered to him. How much money do I have? And that's the same for Donald Trump. And fortunately for him, I said, "Oh, you do have money, huh?" He goes, "I might." I said, "Well, that's interesting. You and I have the same name, different middle initials. I had somebody knocking at my door saying you owe them money to the tune of $500,000, and they couldn't find you." And at that point, I didn't know. But now we have a court document with your address on it. So since you're a man of means and a man of integrity, I'll just give him that address. And he looks at me, he goes, "Fuck it. I'm leaving. Just take everything. I don't fucking care." Because he was put in a corner. But the only thing that mattered to him was that I thought he was broke or said he was broke. And that's one trigger I think Biden can use with Donald Trump. Money has been his identity for all of his life. If Joe can get him on appearing to be broke or not having a lot of money, that is the one thing that's going to trigger that motherfucker.
Oh, definitely. And he's got plenty of cannon fodder. The no rallies, try to hitch up to anybody else holding a gun,
Right.
going to the Libertarian National Convention. And then you got Letitia James taking 400 and some million. You got E. Jean Carroll taking another 90 million. Just it's everything zapping in for bits and pieces. Joe's got plenty of ammo there.
Well, you might even bring up True Social losing $350 million in a quarter, a company that's sinking every day. A lot of times Donald Trump would say, "Oh, the convictions will just work in my favor. It won't hurt the value of my company." Well, we know that's quite the opposite. It's affecting polls. It's affecting his money. It's affecting his support. And this is the thing that's going to get at Donald Trump. If he's looking like a financial failure, there's nothing worse you can say about him. You could call him a pedophile, a rapist, but you tell him he's broke, he's going to lose his shit.
Oh yeah, and it's going to be a sight to see. I hope I'm off that night so I can have my popcorn ready and I can watch it live.
Yeah, yeah, it may be the undoing of Donald Trump. I'm still not convinced he's going to show up, that he might come up with some, you know, people will say, well, he'll just say that he lost on purpose or that he really won or whatever. But the fact of the matter is people, all people are going to see him in his disjointed, disoriented self. And that's going to be hard to explain away. And the value of this debate is that, when Trumplefucks watch the news, they watch Fox, OAN, Newsmax, and they only get part of the story. They don't get the truth and they don't get the whole story. But this debate will be live and everybody will see it at the same time. It will not be edited. It cannot be spun. And this is when it's going to hit a lot of these people um, hard when they see how disastrous Donald Trump is going to be. I mean, it's one thing if you say Joe Biden's slow or forgets stuff. Yeah, maybe he does. He's 82 years old, but not important shit. Donald Trump just seems off his fucking rocker by the clips I've seen, and the things he's talking about have nothing to do with the topic at hand. Then we hear about that CEO meeting where these people were inclined to vote for Donald Trump and they come out shaking their heads going, "I didn't even know what the fuck he was saying. Didn't make any sense." And that's what people are going to see in the debate.
Oh yeah. And I mean that CEO meeting, these were people who were predisposed to give him money
Mm-hmm.
before the meeting. They were planning to. And they walk out and they're like, oh, maybe giving him money is a bad idea. Even though he's saying the things that if he gets elected, he would make them money by lowering their taxes and stuff. And they're like, oh, this could be like if they're saying it's better to not give him money than the tax cuts he would get them. That's saying something.
Yeah, and let's be honest. If you're a big time corporation or big time financial guy, you got to be loving the way the stock market's going, and that's Joe Biden's doing. Why would you want to get rid of that and have a lesser, if not a tanking of our economy with Donald Trump in? It's all more about ideology and power. I understand that. But if they figure that Donald Trump is just, Captain Queeg from the Caine Mutiny and just is nuts, people are going to be afraid of what might happen. You don't know if this guy's going to press the nuclear weapon button or what he's going to do or how he's going to embarrass us. So this will be a full exposure of Donald Trump. Everybody will get to see it at the same time in real time. And I think it will have a serious effect if he's got the courage enough to show up to the debate. And courage and brains are something Donald Trump has fallen short of so many fucking times.
Oh, definitely. I mean, if he had courage, he wouldn't have found um, a way to claim bone spurs 5 different times to dodge the draft.
Yeah,
Um,
we need to talk about that after we take the break because I think a lot of people are confused about that situation.
Fair enough. Yeah. Um, but yeah, as far as him dodging the draft, he used bone spurs, what, 5 times, was it?
Yeah, he's a
And, they want that guy to be commander in chief and they think he's good for the military. And that part has never made any sense to me.
no, has not. Well, I tell you what, Eric, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. I'm here in Savannah, Georgia. Eric is with us today. He's in his normal spot, that being Iowa. We're different time zones, but we were able to connect up and get this done, and I'm glad of it. Eric always has some great insights and perspectives to talk about. And again, a reminder, if you want to follow Eric, you can do that on YouTube and on TikTok by going to at Analytical Iowan, ANALYTICALIOWAN. So check it out. He does a lot of great pieces and you'll learn some shit. You brought something up, Eric, before we took the break about this whole draft thing, and it got people pretty excited. Something passed in the House which would require, well, not even require, automatically, um, automatically register all kids over the age of 18 for the draft, and it would go up to the age of 26. Um, and of course, everybody thought, "Oh my God, they're bringing back the draft," and that's not exactly what it is. And frankly, there's no way it's going to pass the Senate, and the president's not going to sign it. So it's really not a thing. It's just noise the Republicans are trying to make.
Well, and even if it does pass the Senate and Joe Biden signs it, it actually is a pretty good deal because it eliminates the need. Because normally, I think you have 30 days from your 18th birthday to go down to the post office. You get the little card, you fill it out, you mail it in, or I think you can do it online now. But you have to do it, or you can face severe penalties, including felonies, for not doing it.
Right.
It eliminates that. It just automates the process, um, which wouldn't be all bad. But it's not them bringing back the draft. However, I heard Donald Trump said at one of his rallies that he wants 2 years mandatory military service for every American over 18.
Right.
Now, it's funny, the Republicans and everyone's losing their mind that they're bringing back the draft with this measure. And Donald Trump is the one who's actually saying he wants to bring back the draft. Not even a draft, just make it mandatory, I guess.
Right. Like some socialist country or like Russia. You got to go serve 2 years. And well, I'm glad you're on here because I wanted to ask you this question. I wasn't sure because I haven't been paying attention. In 1978, I was 18 years old. It was shortly after Vietnam, and it was shortly after the draft was ended in the 70s. And then when I was told I had to register for the draft, and all my friends, we were all freaked out about it because we just gone through a decade where people were getting drafted and killed, but we had no choice. We had to register, and we were just hoping against hope that there would be no war until we're 30, and we were no longer qualified for it. And thankfully, I wasn't drafted. There has been no draft. Um, is that still going on now? You're younger than I am. Did you have to register for the draft too?
100%. I
Okay.
remember doing it. It's still a thing. You still have to register on the off chance that we need that enlistment. But they've also done so many good things. Now I've seen some other creators talking about it. Like for those that enter the military straight out, their enlistment actually counts as they're registering for the selective service, so they don't have to.
Right.
Um, but we've done so much with the military, with the GI Bill and some of the other things that they get for just joining and the perks for being in, that we haven't needed the draft, and they don't anticipate us needing a draft because we keep the flow of new soldiers coming in year after year um, up. We keep the numbers high.
Well, and the other thing you have to consider, everything in politics is political. And this is why I'm surprised by the Republicans, specifically Donald Trump, overturning Roe v. Wade. That's not a good political a decision, or giving money to the rich and taking it from the middle class. That's not a good political decision. And frankly, starting the draft up would be comparable as far as unpopularity in this country. People would be freaking out. Even if you did put, even if it wasn't a draft as much as a mandatory service, that's not going to play well in this country. There's going to be a lot of people very angry about it. And I don't understand why they keep pulling these things out of their ass that are bad for elections when we're approaching election. Is it simply that they are panicked and they're trying to do anything to get the red meat eating, mouth breathing pieces of shit whipped up? I don't know what they're thinking of here. None of this is a good idea.
I think, well, like as far as automating the process, that's not so bad. Some of the comments I've seen on videos involving that as well. If we can automate that, why don't we automate voter registration? Let's automate taxes,
There
and
you go.
they already have all of our stuff. Just send me a form at the end of the tax season, telling me how much I'm getting back, how much I owe, make, and be done. You know, so it's not a bad idea. But as far as instituting mandatory service or actually doing a draft, you're right. That would be horrible. It would um, because some of the comments I'm seeing from the Trumplafucks about this mandatory or this automated selective service that they're talking about is, well, see, the Democrats just want to do this so they can send you to fight in Ukraine. It
Right.
was the Republicans who passed it. It was their idea. It has nothing to do with Ukraine. It's just taking something that was already a thing and streamlining the process. As long as you have a birth certificate and a social security number, they have all your information. They know when you turn 18. They're making it easy. But they try to whip up fear, and they're going to use that then to turn around and say, well, see, they want to start a war in Ukraine, and they're going to put American troops on the ground. And I think you're right. They're trying to whip up the Republican base and some independents to vote against the Democrats, even though Republicans came up with the idea.
Well, here's the silly thing about this. They keep trying to whip up the base so they get out and vote. But the fact of the matter is that they've already done that. And while they're doing this, they're alienating the other people that they actually need to vote in hopes of winning an election. They've really got a short-sighted strategy here. It's a losing strategy, and I can't believe they continue to do that. We were talking about this at the break about immigration. They want to lay that at the feet of Joe Biden, that he left the border open, yet they pulled up the bipartisan bill twice, and twice the Republicans shut it down. the Democrats pretty much took that talking point away from them. But you had some thoughts on some other immigration issues, and please bring that up.
Well, it came out today, at least is when I was hearing it. I don't know if it was in the last couple of days, there was a federal decision. Might have been Tuesday, not sure. Um, but a federal court overruled an Iowa law that our governor, Kim Reynolds, signed. Of course, they say they're going to appeal. Um, but it gave the state courts the ability to deport anybody who is here undocumented, who has previously been deported once by the by federal immigration,
Right.
regardless of if they have a pending case with immigration or not, or if there is an appeal in the process. If they've been kicked out and came back under any circumstances, this law would let Iowa courts kick them out of the country. Well, this federal judge said, no, that's not how that works. Immigration is clearly a federal power. You don't get a set immigration law, at the state level. This doesn't fly. And I don't see the appeals court, I don't see the Supreme Court giving states power over the federal government.
Right. Well, you maybe heard that Joe Biden made an executive order yesterday, I believe, regarding immigration, and this one is interesting. It's basically protecting the spouses, the immigrant spouses of American citizens. I mean, we've heard the stories about couples and families being separated because one's an immigrant and one is a citizen. And this executive order is kind of protecting them. And, it could affect as many as 500,000 people. So it's a significant type of thing. But I think it's important, just let's not destroy families just for the fucking sake of doing it, just for the sake that this person isn't yet an immigrant. They're going to become, or isn't yet a citizen. They're going to become a citizen because they're married to a citizen.
Yeah. But the bad thing I'm seeing by people on both sides of the aisle with this executive order is they're bashing Joe Biden for his other executive order on immigration, giving the Republicans what they want as far as closing the border and everything.
Right.
And now they're saying, well, too little, too late. Why didn't you do this 3 years ago? Why didn't you do something? They're calling him out on it. And calling him out for not doing it sooner isn't necessarily a bad thing. But they're going after him for the other immigration thing. And I think the other immigration executive order, I think he expects to fail. I think he's going to push it through the courts, because it's going to get challenged. I think he's expecting it to fail. And then he can go, well, see, that's what Republicans wanted us to do all along. It failed. We have to either put something through Congress. I knew it was going to fail. I think that was part of it. But getting these spouses citizenship or amnesty or whatever he's doing here to not deport them is a good starting step, as long as it comes with something down the road that does get them to citizenship at some point.
It strikes me as a little disconcerting. I've talked a lot about the Republicans and having all these hearings and trying to impeach Mayorkas and Joe Biden and all this stuff. And none of it was ever going to work. It was all performative. It was all just for perception's sake. But it's not limited to just the Republicans. The Democrats doing the same thing, bringing the bipartisan bill up twice, knowing it's going to fail, but doing it for performance sake. The other issues that they bring up that know it's going to fail. What happens is we have a Congress who's supposed to be making decisions and take actions for this country. But both sides are just taking the time and effort and money to do this just to try to make the other group look bad. Now, I don't hold the Democrats in as much fault with as the Republicans, mainly because they got to push back with something. They got to do something. They can't let the Republicans continue to gaslight. But this is where our Congress is broken. They're too busy doing fucking performances on both sides, and zero is getting done.
Oh yeah, I would agree. Like holding up votes that, like you said, you're going to fail just to put people on the record of being on one side or the other. Like, and to be fair, I think Chuck Schumer was right to pull up
Oh,
the
I do too.
immigration thing twice to show people and to show the people in the middle that Republicans are going to scream about immigration but not actually do anything. That's an important thing to remind people. But the fact is, they should have been, you know, 10 years ago, they would have said, screw Donald Trump, and they would have passed something. They would have passed it because they wanted it done
Right.
so they could go back to their constituents in their individual races and say, see, I got the border. We got the Democrats to cave. We got the border bill done. Joe Biden signed it. We forced his hand. But now they're so wrapped up in the ideology of one man that they're holding everything up to prop up his candidacy. And I don't, other than the fact that they don't have anybody to replace him, should he not run, I don't know why they're propping him up this bad.
Yeah. There's a lot of rumors going around now. If you watch TikTok, there's rumors that the Democrats are huddling behind the scenes trying to get Joe Biden replaced because they're afraid he's going to lose to Donald Trump, which is absolute bullshit. But there's also those rumors going around about the Republicans looking to replace Donald Trump. And that would make some sense given all that's going on and how Donald Trump is losing his shit. I'm just thinking it's a little too late. They hung on too long. They've really got nobody that they can replace him with that could garner any kind of support and that would also maintain the Trumplafucks voting for them, because that's the real problem. The Trumplafucks just won't vote. And that would be devastating for the Republicans. I don't know how they even replace Donald Trump. There isn't a uh, plan B, as it were.
I mean, they could potentially, like, they don't have an actual candidate, but I could see them doing something 4 days after his sentencing. Um, and say, because that's when they have their convention, is 4 days after he gets sentenced, as of
Right,
right now.
right,
And they could say, well, you know what? You got actual prison time and you're sitting, you're not at Club Fed, you're at a maximum security prison or wherever they send him, with 34 convictions, them saying, well, we're not nominating you. And them end run around, nominate Chris Christie or Mitt Romney or somebody like that, just to throw in somebody who could still garner some votes nationally. But I don't know who, they just don't have anybody that can appeal to their entire party.
no, and it's not going to be Nikki Haley. And like if you put up a Chris Christie or a Mitt Romney or even Nikki Haley, then all of a sudden all of Donald Trump's base just won't vote. And then they're fucked on the down ballot too. They're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place because they held on too long to Donald Trump, who is a fucking loser. They didn't have enough foresight to think that, yeah, maybe we should try something different. They haven't been able to do that. So they're kind of trapped. They need Donald Trump to be the nominee. And while I think he might get crushed emotionally or physically, I hope he is the nominee, because that would be a perfect ending to this nightmare we've gone through for the last 8 years.
Oh, I think you're right. But if they do replace him, like I said, I don't know who they could put up. There's not, I mean, there's a few people with national name recognition, but none of the ones that the MAGA would vote for could unify the rest of the party. Not really. I mean, they might because they're still a Republican, but anybody that's not MAGA, won't get the MAGA vote.
Right,
And anybody who is MAGA won't get any independent vote.
right, right, exactly. Um, we've got a lot of things to look forward to. The next one would be the debate. We'll see how that goes. Then you talked about the sentencing on July 11th, and then after that, July 15th or so, the convention for the RNC, and that's proving to be kind of a shit show too. But we had another appeal made by Donald Trump. We got the convictions, we got the verdict in on this trial in the Manhattan district, And we're waiting for the sentencing. And typically, the gag orders that they would have on defendants would continue through the sentencing. Well, Donald Trump is feeling a little upset because people are attacking him, saying he was convicted 34 times, in spite of the fact that's fucking true. But he wants to respond, and he has this gag order in place. So he made an appeal to the New York Supreme Court saying, take the gag order off. I should be able to defend myself. Went to the New York Supreme Court and they said, fuck yourself. No, the gag order stays on. So Donald Trump is getting another loss, and this has got to take its toll on his own psyche.
Oh yeah. Well, I did a TikTok on that, and I had an idea in there. Now, I think he's going to be tiptoeing around this gag order even more than he was before. And the only reason I think that is, I think somebody told him that this changes. You're now a convicted felon,
Yeah,
Donald Trump. You're not citizen Donald Trump. So if you violate this gag order, Judge Marchand doesn't have to give you near the leniency that he would give you before because you've been convicted 34 times. He
right.
could set 3 days of violation. You're going into a cell. He could say 30 days of violation. You're going into a cell. He probably won't say $1,000 pay up.
No,
And I think he's very, very leery about breaking that gag order now. Not to mention it's something that they can look at his sentencing because he did keep violating the gag order after being convicted. And if he gets hit with a contempt charge now, that could be a violation of his pre-sentencing release.
right.
Because right now he's
Exactly.
out free waiting to be sentenced, and they could say, "Well, sorry, you're going in a cell till you're sentenced for sure." I think he's going to tiptoe around this thing. He's going to complain about the gag order, but he's not going to violate it. I think he's scared, and he's very scared of going into a prison cell.
Well, he should be scared. And I've offered up the perspective, and I don't even know if it's possible, if it's true, if it could even happen. But if I'm looking at this, he's going to get sentenced on July 11th for the 34 felony charges. Honestly, I don't see how he doesn't get some jail time, given all the things that have happened and his behavior and his disdain for the judge and the court and the witnesses and the jury and all this shit. I don't know how he doesn't get a certain amount of jail time. But beyond that, what do you think about the prospect of him saying, okay, you're going to get a year in jail for the 34 felonies, but now we've got to talk about the violations of the gag order? The first nine, he fined them $1,000 apiece. But so those are done. You can't you can't punish him for those again. But there's at least another four of them that have come out, and he has stayed his decision on that. So I'm presuming at the sentencing, he's going to make a decision on that, how he's going to punish him. And like you said, I don't expect him to say, okay, $1,000 a piece. That's not going to happen. He's already violated it and then violated after he violated. So he hasn't learned a lesson. The judge is going to have to do something stronger. Is it conceivable that he does put him in jail over and above the sentence for the 34 felonies, put him in jail for a few days, a week, 10 days because of the gag order violations? I think that's a possibility, but I'm not a lawyer and I'm not a judge, so I don't fucking know.
Yeah, I don't know if that is actually a possibility. It sounds good. I like the sound of it.
Yeah, yeah, I do too. But that has to be addressed. If he's
You
got
would,
violations that he said, I'm going to hold on that decision. He didn't say, I'm not going to make a decision. He said, I'm going to reserve my decision. And that would suggest a decision has to come.
yeah, it might be a deal where, let's say he gives Donald Trump a year, 1 year per uh, felony, which isn't outside the realm of possibility, considering I think they all have a maximum of four. And with the
Yeah.
number of felonies, I could see him getting a year each. And they might stack them so they all run concurrently, so he only
Yeah.
does 1 year total. But that would put him in prison through the election. But But I could see him saying, well, before you serve that, I'm giving you another 15, 20 days over you know, in the tombs for the gag order violations, and you got to serve those too,
Right.
just to
Right.
prove a point. The other thing I was wondering, I don't know, since Donald Trump is saying he's got to appeal, or he's going to appeal. I know from what I've read, they do not have to grant him release while he appeals. That's not automatic.
Right. Exactly. You'll probably
Um,
get that, but it may depend on his behavior at the sentencing. If he's at the sentencing and they say, we're giving you 2 years in jail, how does Donnie react? It could be anyway. And then that could determine
right,
whether he gets an appeal and gets a stay on the appeal.
right. But the other thing I don't know is I don't know how the gag order goes in relationship to an appeal. I know it stays on through sentencing, but I don't know if they can order the gag order to stay in effect through the appeal, because it wouldn't be an appeal that would be in Judge Merchan's court. It would be at the appellate level.
Right.
I don't know how that would work. If they
Uh,
would keep
yeah.
the gag order the whole time he appeals or not.
Yeah, I don't know how that would work, but at the same time, if he says, listen, you violated the gag order 4 times after we fined you the $1,000 per gag order 9 times, we're going to put you in jail for 4 days. I don't think that's appealable. I don't think that, I mean, if he says you're going to jail today, you're going to fucking jail for that. He can appeal the convictions, but not the gag violations. That's, I think, under the judge's purview.
I I want to say I read something that says he could appeal it, but I also read somewhere that he doesn't get out, like being appealing the contempt wouldn't get him out of serving it if he, like if he only got 4 days, he goes, well, I'm going to appeal. If it takes him 2 weeks to hear the appeal, his time could have already been served before they even appeal it, and then it's just a matter of getting it off his record.
Yeah, but
But he still would have done the time.
at this point, his record is so bad it doesn't really make a difference.
No,
It's interesting that the RNC convention comes up 4 days after the sentencing, and the RNC is having all kinds of problems. They don't have a lot of money. There was even worries that they'd even be able to put on the convention because they didn't have the money. Their sponsors have all bailed on them because they don't want to be associated with Donald Trump. Um, Given all that's going on here with this convention and how it's kind of tentative, and throw in the fact that Donald Trump said the host city sucks. Do you think that sentencing is going to have any bearing on what happens in that convention?
like I said, I think if he doesn't get released on parole, and he's actually, they've been making plans for what might happen if he's on an ankle monitor, or if he's on house, like if he's confined to Mar-a-Lago. But I think if he is actually sitting in a cell, I think they find a way to nominate anybody else.
Yeah.
They will throw anybody up there just to put up somebody. Um, and it could be the thing where Judge Merchan, you talk about him giving him some time for these other gag order violations. What if he gives him 1 day past, gives him a total of 5 days or something? So he's in prison through the end of the convention. So
Yeah.
he's in a cell all the way through it just to stick it to Donald Trump.
And the judge Marchand is a pretty professional, pretty conservative guy. I don't think he'll do anything crazy, but I think he's tired of taking shit, and he's tired of dealing with somebody who doesn't respect the court or respect the judge. I don't think he's going to tolerate that. Now we have another guy, Steve Bannon, who's scheduled to report to jail on July 1. And he's still wiggling around and squirming around, trying to find a way where he doesn't have to go to jail. And all these complaints and all these arguments he's had have all failed. I remember seeing him quoted one time, no jail will shut me up. I beg to differ, Steve. You go into this jail, no one's going to fucking hear from you. You aren't going to do your podcast. You're out of commission for 4 months leading up to the election. You fucked up. You should have did the 4 months 2 years ago and been done with it. But your ego wouldn't allow you to do it. Now we're taking you out of the mix for the election.
Well, did you hear? He thought he was going to Club Fed, the minimum security little camp thing,
Yeah.
but he's not going there. He's going to a low, like a minimal. It's like the next step up. It does have a wall. It's still going to be a jail, and it's not as cushy as what he thought he was going to. And it's not going to be all white collar criminals. There's going to be some people in there who did some sketchy stuff
Yeah.
that he's going to have to deal with, and all because he's still facing charges from the build the wall scam.
Right. Right. Exactly. Yeah. He's still going to have to go on trial in September, which is interesting because uh, if he gets 4 months, he won't be out of jail till October. So he's going to have to be transported from prison to go on trial for his next stint in prison. So he's trying every which way to get out of it, but it's too late. It's done. He appealed it. He lost. He's going to trial. He's going to try to squirm every which way he can, but it's not going to work. He's going to fucking jail. And then we've got the situation with Alex Jones. Now, at this point, he's not going to jail. I don't know if he'll ever go to jail, but he's been dicking around with this lawsuit that he lost to the tune of $1.6 billion. And now it looks like, again, down to nut cutting time, he's going to have to start paying up, and they're going to start liquidating his personal property. I think the business is next, but he's going to have to be selling off fucking everything.
Yeah, I heard like they're expecting to sell his 2 point something million-dollar ranch uh that he owns. Vehicles, literally, they are going to go in and strip down everything he owns down to bare nothing. And he was in tears and he was bawling and everything. Well, maybe if you wouldn't have said the parents of the Sandy Hook victims were paid actors, and you weren't spreading such stupid conspiracy theories, you know, you wouldn't be in this situation. But he keeps saying all the stupid shit, and then he still doubles down.
Right, exactly. If if early on when he got the shit, he said, "Oh yeah, I fucked up, I lied, I apologize," he wouldn't be in this trouble now. But just like every other Republican, doubles, triples down, and he cannot admit he's wrong. And now he's going to pay the price for it.
Yeah, he said something about this isn't the um, end of my speaking out against government tyranny or something like that after, but they're looking at shutting down InfoWars. They're looking at selling off like the company that owns his program is looking like they're going to have to sell. And if they don't, he's had to sell his stake in that company. So even if the company's allowed to exist, it's not going to exist with him owning any part of it. At
No.
best, he would be a paid employee.
Yeah, but the problem with that is first of all, if they take all his personal property, and even if they take his company, his interest in the company, it doesn't even make a fucking dent in $1.6 billion. So that means everything he earns for the rest of his life is on the hook, and he's going to be broke for a long fucking time. He'll never pay back that $1.6 billion, even if he liquidates everything he has, business and personal. He's not even going to get halfway there. And then he's going to be on the hook every day with every dollar that he makes. His life is fucked. And I'm sure he understands that, but he's still trying to be the tough guy.
Well, yeah, and this isn't even the full extent of what he's going to owe,
No.
because apparently I'm trying to remember, there was something with the class action lawsuit from the Sandy Hook victims. Um, like they tried to get a class action going or something, and some of the parents didn't sign on, and or most of them didn't sign on or whatever, and they opted to sue separately. And this is only a portion of the Sandy Hook families that have sued, and
Right.
there's more that still could sue him. This number could go up yet.
Yeah. It's kind of like what I talk about Donald Trump, though. everybody's worried about all 4 trials to go and he gets 1 billion years. You can only do so much to one human being. You can only take so much money out of Alex Jones. You can only put Donald Trump in jail for so long. To be perfectly honest, if Donald Trump goes to jail for 6 months, that pretty much ends him, ends any prospects he has in politics. But I don't think he does well surviving in jail for any extended period of time or short time for that matter. Now, there's another guy who's stirred some things up, and we're talking about Rudy Giuliani. He's a guy that lost a significant lawsuit to those 2 women in Georgia. And he's been dicking around, talking shit. Now the judge is pissed off about it. He's going to start losing his shit and could even end up in jail for the lying he's doing.
Oh yeah, he lost $148 million, and he's going through bankruptcy because of it. And they're looking at taking some of his, doing the same thing to him that they did to Alex Jones, seizing it all and selling it all off just to come in close to paying for any of it. And he's not going to have it all. He's not even going to come close.
No, no, he's not going to be able to pay it off. And I should say the Alex Jones situation, um, he appealed the amount he owed or whatever he did, and they just said, we're not even listening to it. Or no, wait, I'm sorry. Talking about Steve Bannon, his appeal, they didn't even listen to it. So that's why he's going to jail. Same thing with Alex Jones. He tried to appeal it and try to play all these games. That's the one thing that always gets me when I'm talking on TikTok. People will come to me and say, well, he'll just appeal it. He'll just appeal it. Yeah, how have those appeals been? When's the last time you heard in the dozens and dozens of appeals that Donald Trump or any of these Trump-fucks have made where they've actually won the appeal? It's nothing more than a delay of time, but they always fucking lose.
And if they do win, they win a smidge.
Yeah.
Like 2 of the gag orders where the one I think it was the E. Jean Carroll gag order where they came up, the appeals court came back and said, okay, well, you can talk about the judge. And then in the one, I think it was the DC appeal on the gag order there, they came back and said, okay, yeah, you can talk about Jack Smith. And that's why they didn't hear the appeal in this latest one with Judge Merchan, because Judge Merchan said, okay, fine, you can talk about me, you can talk about Alvin Bragg. The 2 things that the other courts have said you could talk about, I said you could talk about him.
Right.
He molded his decision around that. But when they win, it's only minute things. It's never a big win on anything. It's
And
never the whole thing.
And it's because their appeals are absolutely ridiculous. They're not appealing on any substance. They're appealing just for the sake of appealing, trying to get that delay. And they do get some delays, but eventually you got to pay the piper. You can delay it and delay it and delay it, but that doesn't end it. Every time something delays uh, something for Donald Trump, I constantly hear the Trump-fuck saying, oh, he won again. He's exonerated. These people don't have enough sense to understand that he didn't get out of it. He just bought a little time. He's still going to get fucked over on this deal, and he will on all these trials. People think that if they extend it past the election, that's a win for Donald Trump. No, it's not. The classified documents or the January 6th thing or Georgia, those aren't going away. He's going to be tried for them. And if there's any question that he's going to jail with the Manhattan District, if he's found guilty in those other 3 cases, there's no question he's going to jail, because over and above the more seriousness of the crimes, he's already a convicted felon. I don't even think they can give him anything but jail time if he's found convicted.
I think you might be right, because I know a lot of times there are minimum, even if there's not minimum penalties for first offenders, like it escalates if you're now a repeat offender with multiple crimes, even if
Right.
it's not the exact same crime. So we'll see what happens there, but I think you're right. I think if he gets convicted in even one of them, it's guaranteed jail time. And like I said before, it could be a violation of some sort of if he just gets probation in New York, him getting convicted might revoke his probation. It's entirely possible. So he could still get jail time. Like there's so many things at play. He's juggling so many things, and they're all sharp objects, and the guy doesn't know how to juggle.
He doesn't. He's not very nimble. He's not very coordinated. He doesn't juggle well. I can't remember who was saying this, but it made a lot of sense to me. There are other things that Donald Trump is doing with funneling money off his campaign stuff to a company that really doesn't exist, and it's highly illegal. And whoever was saying this, I can't remember now. They were saying, "Look, maybe it was Hawk. Maybe it was Hawk who said this. Um, Hawk's on TikTok, but at this point, Donald Trump doesn't have many options. He can either win the election or die in jail. Those are the two options here. So he doesn't have a lot of latitude to try to play games anymore. So his only goal right now at this point is to win the election. So committing new crimes doesn't even matter to him anymore. He will commit multiple crimes between now and November just to get himself in a position to win the election.
And that makes sense. And that might have been Hawk. I mean, it just because if he's got nothing left, what else is he going to do but try everything? And if everything includes more crimes, so be it. He doesn't care because he's going to probably spend the rest of his life post-election inside of a cell waiting for another trial, waiting for another trial.
At the very least, he'll be in court day in and day out, dealing with trials and gag orders and all this stuff. And, that's what I've said before. People are worried about these trials coming before the election. Maybe one more does come before the election, but I doubt it. But I'm not worried about that. We've got the convictions. And after the trial's done, he's in his most vulnerable position. He's got no protection. He's not being protected by the Republicans anymore. He's not a candidate for anything anymore. They could just kick his ass up and down the street all they want, and there's nothing he can do about it.
Exactly. I mean, I fully expect if he loses, day after they announce Joe Biden as the winner, I guarantee you he's going to try to come out and say, I'm running for re-election. I'm running for election in 2028. I'm running. I'm a candidate.
Yeah, he'll
But by
try.
then, no one's going to care.
Well, yeah, that's my point exactly. People will say to me, well, if he loses the election in November, he'll just say he won, that it was a hoax, that he was ripped off. And I say, yeah, he probably will, but it didn't really do much but cause noise in 2020. And he's a much weaker human being now. I think what's going to happen after the 2024 election, if he claims that he was robbed or whatever he's going to say, it's not going to have as much impact. The Republicans will be tired of him because he's done nothing but lose for him. The Democrats will laugh at him because he has no power and has no prospects of getting power. He can try to do the same things he did in 2020. He's not the same man. He doesn't have the same power, and neither do the Republicans.
No, you're exactly right. I mean, they're getting their edge in the House is weak. Their prospects of keeping the Senate's weak, and they're not a strong party, and they're getting weaker every day.
They absolutely are. And like you said before, that's going to put them in a position after November 5th in 2024. They're going to have to step back and say, are we just going to flush this thing, or are we going to try to revive it some way? And if they do try to revive it, they're going to have to do something entirely different. They're going to have to come at this a little less draconian. That's why, when people keep talking to me about Project 2025 and I don't act like I really care about it. Sure, it's a scary document, but that's all it is a document. Unless they get power, unless they get control, it's not a thing. So why would we want to worry about it until such time that it's possibly enforced. Not only do you have to have Donald Trump as the president, you have to have control of the House and the Senate. And none of those things is going to happen in 2024. So why would we worry about that shit?
Exactly. We were talking about them having to rebrand and retool what they're doing.
Yeah,
Leads into something else we were talking about earlier, and that is Matt Gates.
there you go. Yeah,
They're they're looking into Matt Gates again. He came out and said they renewed an ethics investigation, and now the ethics committee has come out and said, yeah, we're looking into him again, all because there's major reporting that he was doing things with underage girls, and now in the DOJ's case had fallen apart. And there's been some speculation that they might run him out of Congress, that there might be a motion to, kick him out. Even Fox was saying last fall that they were looking at really doing it.
yeah,
And I was thinking about it, and well, why would they kick him out at this point? We got 6 months to go in their term, and they only have a 2-seat majority. You'd think they'd want to, hold on to every seat they could. And I think it's so they can go to the voters and say, see, look, we did something. We took care of our own. We're
yeah.
not quite that extreme. We got rid of that guy.
Well, I understand the committee is going to issue as many as 25 subpoenas. That would be interesting if they do that. I think that they are trying to save some face because they've accomplished nothing in the House of Representatives. Um, I want to make a correction, though. You were saying they want to kick Matt Gaetz out because of his dalliances with underage women. That's not why the Republicans want to kick him out. They don't care about the dalliances. That's just the excuse. They want to kick him out because he went after the Republicans. He wasn't a loyal Republican, and he made a mess by getting rid of Kevin McCarthy. That was enough for Kevin McCarthy and the Republicans to kick him out. The fact that he has experiences with underage kids, that's just good luck for the Republicans. They've got something they can scream about.
Oh, I fully agree with you there. It's not the fact that he was with underage kids, but it's what they're going to use and what they're going to say as to why they kicked him out. As far as what the appearance they want to give, they want to try to take that moral high ground. My question back to him was this, FBI investigation, you've known about it for how long? Why are you just doing something about it now?
Well, exactly. Um, there's another story. Uh, I mean, it seems like when it comes to um, these things with dealing with underage children and sexual abuse, it seems to be commonplace with Republicans. And I don't know if you heard this story. Trump's spiritual advisor, I believe, is Robert Morris, I think is his name. And he had to resign from his church. This is Donald Trump's spiritual advisor. And he confessed to molesting a 12-year-old girl. This is not only a Republican, this is a Republican who claims to be a man of God and is spiritually advising the former president of the United States. This is all too common with Republicans.
Yeah, it seems like it's really weird how that works out. They want to rail against the trans community. They want to go up against drag queens and whatever. But far more times you hear about conservative, straight, white men, usually pastors of some kind, that are the ones actually harming kids. It's
Yeah.
weird how that works out.
Well, then they mount a war against women with Roe v. Wade and putting women in all kinds of bad situations. It's just the Republicans seem to be their status quo is to go after the American public, whether anybody that's not an old white man. They go
Pretty
after
much.
women, they go after kids, they go after whatever, and they think they can do it with complete immunity. And now
Yeah.
that's starting to change. And I think once we get past November 5th, it's going to get real ugly because I think there's going to be a lot of things exposed. Now the weakness has been exposed and they don't have the power of Congress anymore.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think that's going to be part and parcel to them retooling as they have to start retooling their own brand, whether, like I said, whether it's them joining with the libertarians or something like that and merging or however they retool and try to come back out of this, they're going to have to start doing some major house cleaning and kicking out some of the crazies from their party and just all of that, you know,
Yeah.
because it's not tenable. They're not going to be able to keep up this whole same charade.
Well, if for the folks watching on YouTube, watching the podcast here, we should introduce. We've done it before. That's Eric's dog, Cecilia.
Yes,
She's
Cecilia. Come
sweet,
on. Come on.
just a sweet dog. And
Come here.
I've often said I love all dogs more than most people. And if I could do a podcast about dogs, that would be awesome. But I don't know how I'd
Oh,
make
yeah.
that interesting. I'm guessing
I don't either.
I'm guessing she hasn't made her political stance known to you.
Nope, I haven't figured that one out yet. Although, just a weird side note, when the convictions came out for Donald Trump, I was actually sitting at an animal hospital because she had broken a nail. So I was sitting there waiting for her to get her nail fixed when the convictions came out, sitting in the waiting room. So I couldn't run out and record a podcast because I was waiting for her. But
Well, you got to have your priorities, and your
oh
kids
yeah,
and your dogs are the priorities. All right, Eric, we're going to wrap things up for the Rational Boomer podcast. I want to thank you for coming in. I appreciate that. I'll be back home on Friday, so we'll be back to normal, and you no doubt will be back as well. But I appreciate you coming in today.
oh well, thanks for having me. I love being on the podcast. Glad I could help out. I figured with you being away from home, you'd love having a guest.
Yeah,
Makes it easier.
absolutely. Makes it a lot easier. I appreciate it. Those of you listening, I want to thank you for taking the time to do that. I hope you have a great day, and we will talk to you again tomorrow.